Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will now begin our presentation on sexual conservativeness. So, is sexual conservativeness part of the Asian culture? Sexual conservativeness. What do we mean by that? We define sexual conservativeness as the unwillingness to openly discuss about sex and sexual pleasures. For this research project, we use both primary and secondary research. Regarding the current situation, my group interviewed 6 undergraduate students to gain insights on their opinions, and we further substantiated our research with secondary resources. This video will hopefully provide you with a clearer idea of the relation between Asian culture and sexual conservativeness. Before we begin, let's take a look at the opinions of a few respondents when we asked them, is sexual conservativeness part of the Asian culture?
Sexual conservativeness is part of Asian culture.
Yes.
Sexual conservativeness is part of Asian culture.
Yes, conservativeness is prevalent in our
Asian culture.
Prevalent. Personally, I would say
Conservativeness is part of Asian culture.
Yeah, I think it's about Asian culture.
Conservativeness is part of Asian culture.
Yeah, I would think so.
Sexual conservativeness is part of Asian culture.
So yes, maybe they were right. According to Meston, sexual conservativeness is part of the Asian culture. The national statistics showed that Asians had the lowest rate of premarital sex. The study mentions that not only are they conservative, they also knew less about sex than their other Canadian counterparts. This is mainly due to the different cultural norms such as Chinese proprietary and strict moral and social codes.
Not just Canada, but this was the case for in America too. In a research done by Lotz, she found that Asian Americans were more traditional towards sex. They expressed ideas such as male dominance and female submissiveness. She also mentioned that Asians tend to retain their ethnic identity by continuing Asian social relations and or living in cultural enclaves. And this could be the reason why they retain their traditional Asian attitudes.
Let's take Singapore as an example. It is pretty obvious we are sexually conservative. Even though we discuss about sex, we often link it to procreation and not pleasure. The Indonesian Education and Culture Minister mentioned that
according to our tradition, it's indecent to talk about it, and that is my standpoint.
And Straits Times also mentioned that we acknowledge the fact that our largely Asian society is conservative.
What do we really know? How do we think? Let's find out.
Are you aware about the Book of Changes, I Ching, where they talk about sex very openly, and they even in the olden times they even used to practice adults used to practice sex in front of their children. Are you aware of that?
In China.
not really.
Are you aware of the book I Ching, whereby it's a book written long back in China where they discuss about sex openly?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, have you heard about people in China practicing sex in front of their children?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware about the book Kama Sutra?
Yes.
Okay, you know that it's talking about sex openly and discusses about sexual positions, right?
Correct.
So do you still think that sexual conservativeness is part of Asian culture?
I think it's a little bit of an irony, but at the same time, it really tells you a lot about Asian culture. That although we are conservative about ourselves, it doesn't mean that we restrict ourselves to what we do. If you see back in the past, when people, especially in Europe, when people were conservative about sex, it was at every level. But in the Asian culture, we might be conservative about sex, but that doesn't mean that we don't go the extra length, for example, to buy blue pills or to buy things to make our sexual lives good. So talking about sex and sex itself is two different things. We will invest in sex itself, but talking about sex is not.
Thank you. Okay, so are you aware about the book Kama Sutra where they discuss about sex openly and talk about sexual positions?
Yes.
So do you still think that sexual conservativeness is Asian culture?
Yeah, because not everyone uses the book. It's just that particular people, so it's like so conservative.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware of the book Kama Sutra?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. So you know that Kama Sutra talks about sex openly and about sexual positions, right? So do you still think that sexual conservativeness is part of Asian culture?
It is part of the Indian culture. I mean, Asian culture, yeah. But I think Kama Sutra is targeted toward the royal families who had concubines and stuff like that. So it didn't really like pertain to them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
The book Kama Sutra, whereby they discuss about sex openly and discuss about sexual positions openly.
Yeah, but it's through friends because they usually talk about it when such conversations come up.
Okay, but do you think that sexual conservativeness is still part of Asian culture, even though they talk about sex very openly in the past?
How would I say? It's more of sometimes you're willing to talk about it openly, but it might still be conservative when it comes to doing certain things. Yeah, like maybe how do I say? I would tell a friend that I would bang this girl, but I won't really do it because it's part of my culture and I don't want to like ruin it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, is Asian culture simply sexually conservative with a couple of deviations? Or is there another side to the story? Let's look into our past to find out.
China had 3 sexological texts such as
10万
which addresses 10 questions and answers about sex,
和阴阳法
which shows the methods of intercourse between yin and yang,
天喜之桃坛
which has lectures on the super Tao in the world. These books provided very explicit instructions regarding techniques of intercourse.
Instructions such as the following can be found in literature books from China. You should engage in foreplay with her until she wants to be entered. You should wait and let your penis become harder and larger. This principle is called Shi Qi, accumulating your vital energy. Dead doe in the clearing.
White reeds entangle it.
Lady bosom, plump of spring.
Bold gentleman who plays with her.
Tender young tree in the forest.
Dead deer in the clearing.
White reeds bind it. Lady like jade, slowly and gently. Oh gentle, oh do not crumple my petticoat. Do not cause your hairy dog to bark.
This poem will tell us how openly China used to discuss about sex. And guess who wrote this poem? Confucius, y'all.
《中国古代房中术是一门很神秘的科学。房中术有不同的理解，狭义的理解是指性交技巧，而广义的理解是把中国古代的性科学都叫中国古代房中术。
人类的性行为啊，它有3个功能，第一个呢是快乐的功能。第二是健康的功能，第三是生育的功能。那么在中国古代呢，中国古代的房中术，它对这个健康的功能，它非常重视，把这个人类的性行为、性技巧跟那个健康养生结合在一起。所以中国古代房中术呢，又有一个名称叫房事养生学。这个是中国古代房中术的一个很大的特点。这个房事养生学呢，到了发展到以后啊，并不太受到重视。现在有很多里面很精辟的内容，到现在已经淹没了，已经不可考了。那么到现代性科学呢，当然有很多新的内容，特别是在近代呢，现代好像西方的性科学很发达， 但是里面有很多基本原理，实际上在2000多年前，我们中国的古书上都有，但是没有挖掘而已。比如说一种性反应，这个是上个世纪60年代美国的一些性学权威他们提出了一个人类的性反应。那性反应的原理，比如像女人的在性交过程中的呼吸啦，这个什么时候开始兴奋啦，一步一步怎么样兴奋呢？在中国古书上都写得很详细，但是没有被后代重视、挖掘、发展而已。
中国古代房中术在很早就有了。传说中华民族的祖先皇帝就是一个房中术专家，曾和一些老人和几位女专家讨论房中术。他自己则育1200女而成仙，育就是男人和女人性交的意思。
In much of China's history, sex was not seen in the light of morality, and restrictions were placed mostly for health reasons rather than conservative values. During the Zhou dynasty, masturbation by men was seen as unhealthy and was forbidden, for it was said to cause a complete loss of his vital yang essence. Women could masturbate freely, as they were said to have an unlimited supply of yin essence. Medical texts only warned women against masturbation with foreign objects, which were believed to injure the womb and internal sexual organs. Nocturnal emissions or wet dreams that men had were seen as a health problem for men. During this time, female homosexuality was widespread, but male homosexuality was rare. Male homosexuality was forbidden because it was considered to cause a complete loss of yang essence on part of both men. In the case of prostitution, it was accepted by the Chinese. Men thought that they could gain more yin from prostitutes than from normal women. They believed that since such women had sex with so many men, that they had acquired more yang essence from them. Thus, they could give a patient more yang essence than he had lost. However, it was the identification of prostitutes having diseases that they began warning men against them. In the later Han Dynasty, sexual texts began to surface, such as the Handbook of the Plain Girl and the Art of the Bedchamber. Both texts referred to a yellow emperor who was attempting to live a long, healthy life and obtain a form of immortality through sex. Emphasis was placed on breathing techniques during sex to prolong a man's orgasm and to make a woman orgasm several times to gain her yin essence. Many of the texts continue the sexual instruction to the Yellow Emperor, trying to tell him how to obtain a long, immortal, healthy life by having as many sexual relations with many women, gaining their yin essence without expending his own yang essence, or prolonging his orgasms and ejaculation. All of the texts are very detailed and each has a unique set of sexual positions with animal-like names for each individual sex position. Sex was seen as a cure-all for all health ailments that men had, and different sexual positions were given as prescriptions to cure these ailments. Homosexuality in China was regarded as a normal facet of life in China prior to the Western impact of 1840 and onwards. Many early Chinese emperors are speculated to have had homosexual relationships accompanied by heterosexual ones. Opposition to homosexuality, according to the study by Hinch, did not become firmly established in China until the 19th and 20th centuries through the westernization efforts of the late Qing dynasty and early Republic of China. Christian missionaries who arrived in Ming Dynasty China, a deeply Confucian society, were shocked at the casual acceptance of male homoerotism among those held in great esteem by the Confucian communities.
This was the same situation in ancient Japan in year 800. The book,
Genji Monogatari,
which was the tale of Genji, was a book that spoke of eroticism as a central part of aesthetic life of the nobility. Fun fact! Prince Genji actually had a schedule for sexual intercourse And when one day he couldn't find a lady to satisfy his desire, he used the lady's brothers to fulfill his desires and needs. Hence, it was evident that sexuality was not treated in a negative manner, and even homosexuality was seen as acceptable.
The Sutra was an ancient Indian Hindu text considered to be the standard work on human sexual behavior in Sanskrit literature. It consists of practical advice on sexual intercourse.
Kama Sutra consists of 7 topics. Firstly, the general remarks, which consist of 3 aims and priorities of life, the acquisition of knowledge and conduct of the well-bred townsman. Secondly, sexual union, which speaks about stimulation of desire, types of embraces, caressing and kisses, marking with nails, biting and marking with teeth, on copulation, slapping by hand and corresponding moaning, virile behavior in women, superior coition and oral sex, preludes and conclusions to the game of love. It describes 64 types of sexual acts. The third topic is acquiring a wife, which mentions the different forms of marriage, relaxing the girl, obtaining the girl, managing alone, union by marriage. The fourth topic is duties and privileges of the wife, which speaks about the conduct of the only wife and conduct of the chief wife and other wives. Fifth is other men's wives, which mentions on behavior of women and men, how to get acquainted, examination of sentiments, the task of go-between, the king's pleasures, behavior in the women's quarters. The sixth topic is about courtesans, which consists of advice of the assistance on the choice of lovers, looking for a steady lover, ways of making money, renewing friendship with the former lover, occasional profits and losses. The last topic is occult practices, whereby on improving physical attractions and arousing a weakened sexual power is being discussed. Those things which increase passion should be done first, and those which are only for amusement or variety should be done afterwards. Kama Sutra, 1883.
So, how did this change of willingness in discussing about sex openly happen? How did this change from openness to conservativeness come about? After thorough research, my group found out that the change could have been influenced by the Victorian morality during the rise of the Victorian era. Victorian morality is a distillation of the moral views of people living at that time of Queen Victoria's reign, which was from 1837 to 1901. The moral climate of the United Kingdom throughout the 19th century in general contrasted greatly with the morality of the previous Georgian period.
Victorian morality can describe any set of values that espouse sexual restraint, low tolerance of crime, and a strict social code of conduct. Having sexual desire was identified almost solely with men and women of lower classes, like prostitutes. Even male doctors were persuaded that women had no sex drive. When a woman did express sexual desire, it was seen as a disease. The closest one could get to asexuality, the more desirable and definitive a woman was. Those in the medical profession even referred to sex as a necessary evil, and did not believe in the concept of the female orgasm. Unmarried females were viewed as impure, and prostitution was considered the great social evil. Due to the prominence of the British Empire, many of these values were spread across the world. The empire included over 14 million square miles of territory and 450 million people. It included more than a quarter of the world's population, and it was said that the sun never set on the British Empire. The spread of Western influences was even greater, as all other countries, even those not directly under British rule, developed major trading and political treaties.
So, do you think sexual conservativeness is still part of the Asian culture? Maybe not. There might be many other factors that might have influenced this. However, Great Britain had the strongest influence in the world at that period of time. Today, Western culture deems Asian culture as conservative, but we fail to realize that the influences of Western culture was one of the main reasons behind our conservativeness in the first place. After watching the responses from different people, we are aware that people still believe that Asian culture does not discuss about sex openly. Many fail to recognize the change in the willingness to discuss eroticism openly, and we hope today's video has enlightened you regarding this topic. Thank you.